My story started in 1930. In the 30s, if you got pregnant out of wedlock, the community judgment was extreme. The shame, embarrassment and humiliation was very hurtful. My grandmother fell pregnant out of wedlock. This forced my grandmother and grandfather to marry. That's how my father came to be. He was born on the 3rd of July, 1930. My grandmother blamed my father for the shame, embarrassment and humiliation she felt and made sure my father never forgot that feeling. Over the years, my father tried to win his mother's love, but he was never able to. When my father was 22 years old, he said to his mum, "I will go to Belgium and work in the mines and will send all my money back to you. Use half the money for yourself and the family, the other half saved for me on my return." 3 years later, he returns in 1955. On his return, he asked his mum for his money. She said, "How dare you even think you can ask? You're an embarrassment to this family. I wish I never had you. There is no money for you." How do you respond to that? My father was heartbroken, hurt, and very angry. Out of anger, he bought a one-way ticket to Australia. Maria, my mum, was living in Sicily. She experienced abuse from her father and grandfather. It was common for immigrants to want to meet ladies from their home country. Maria heard of this and found my father through a dating agency and started writing to him. 2.5 years later, Maria buys a one-way ticket to travel to a country she'd never been, to marry a man she'd never met. Now, I call that courage. She arrives on Boxing Day 1960. The first night in the lucky country, the land of opportunity, as they said, she rolls over and cries herself to sleep. The next day, my mum insists that they marry, as they had sex out of wedlock. Later that year, they have their first child, a boy. My father was a jealous, possessive man. He would control her and move any time she made friends. By now, depression is setting in. She cannot bear the loneliness of no friends and moving all the time. My father works 7 days per week. My mum pleads with my dad to spend 1 day per week with her. She was lonely and felt isolated. My father became angry and said, "How dare you? I'm working hard for the family. Why do you not appreciate me?" How much pain must a woman be in to be 7 months pregnant with her second child and decide to kill herself? By jumping into a well as she was about to jump in, my father grabbed her by the hair and threw her to the ground. As the due date was fast approaching, my mum wanted a baby girl, as she'd hoped having a girl would make her life worth living, something to focus on and something to look forward to. At 4:07 p.m. on the 9th of February 1963, Maria was so disappointed in giving birth to a baby boy. That boy was me. My mum's wish for a baby girl happened on the 15th of August 1966. She gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl, Anna Maria, my sister. In the 60s, it was common for women to prop up a bottle with a pillow and feed the baby. On the 2nd of August 1966, she did just that. She gave Anna Maria the bottle, popped it up with a pillow and left the room. When she came back, Anna Maria was choking on the milk. My mum became frantic, calling out for my dad, who was working on the farm. By the time the ambulance got Anna Maria to the hospital, Anna Maria had passed away. She had choked on the milk. My mum overheard the doctor saying they will need an autopsy. My mum thought they were blaming her, so my mum couldn't speak English. I can't imagine the pain my mum was in, losing her baby girl, feeling responsible, and living with a controlling, abusive man. 6 months later, just after my 4th birthday, I was home alone with my mum. I couldn't find her anywhere. I started searching for her. I found her on the bedroom floor, unconscious. I pushed, pulled, Wake up, Mum. I was 4, terrified. I didn't know what to do. Finally exhausted, I fall asleep on my mum. My dad found me when he got home from work. He called an ambulance and they got her to the hospital where they pumped her stomach from the pills she took. To attempt to kill yourself in that time, they called you mad. My mum had lost her voice forever to my dad. My mum was locked up in Mayday Hills Mental Institution in Beechworth. I can remember looking at my mum through a 12 by 12 inch glass window as we were leaving Mayday Hills Mental Institution. I remember feeling her pain, her despair, her loneliness. She just wanted to come home and she just wanted somebody to love her. By the next year, my mum was on psychiatric medication. Both her and my dad were alcoholics. My mum and dad went into detox and I got to stay at the O'Briens for 2 weeks. I can remember Mrs. O'Brien and her kindness. She asked me what I wanted to do. No one had ever asked me. I was scared, terrified, but she knew exactly how to make me feel. She took me bareback horse riding. How cool was that? It was so much fun. For one day, Mrs. O'Brien made me feel like a king. She was kind, gentle, and loving. Once we returned home, we found all our furniture had been removed from the house and stored in the garage. As I was the smallest child, my dad put me through the window so we can unlock the door. Not too long after, 3 men pull up. I could see my father was angry as he confronted the men. They beat the shit out of him. My mother pulled the knife out of her dress, like who puts a knife down there, and went the men. They knocked her out cold with one punch to the face. I was 5 years old. I had to do something, so I grabbed an axe. I actually goaded the 3 men with this axe. One of the men grabbed me by the head and said, "This fight's not for you, son." We were evicted. Mrs. O'Brien, the lady who was so kind, allowed us to sleep in her dairy on the concrete floor until we found suitable housing some 10 kilometres closer to town. I'm now 6 years old, and my mum was frantic, panicking, and asked me to help her. "Eugene, please help me," she says. "Pray with me. We're all going to die." My mum was very religious and believed in the flood. And she believed, and her voices were telling her that we're all going to drown. And so she's asking me to support her. I get down on my knees, terrified, and pray with her. I was so scared because I couldn't swim. But I couldn't show my mum I was scared. This went on month after month after month. I was visiting my mum in Mayday Hills Hospital. I was 12 years old. The interpreter didn't show up this day and they asked me to interpret, which of course I volunteered. I agreed, and after some basic questions about health and general well-being, the nurse asked me to ask my mum, was there anything else? Is there anything she would like us to know? I asked my mum and she said, "Yes, there is. Can you please tell the nurse can you please tell the nurse to ask my husband to stop raping me? Because I don't like it." The nurse said, "Is there anything else?" My mum said no, and she said, "We'll see you next time." The sad truth was that what my mum said was the truth. But because she was a paranoid schizophrenic, I didn't believe her. My father wanted sex and my mum would say no. My dad would wake me up and get me to bring wine to both of them until my mum was so drunk that she couldn't resist, and my dad would do whatever he wanted to her sexually without any regard for my mum, for myself, or my brother. It really messes with your mind when you know what is happening is wrong, but that mental health system did nothing. So what are you meant to think when you're 12? It really fucks with your mind. Fast forward to when I'm 15 years old, my father pushed my mum off a set of stairs. That was it. I was finally old enough, I couldn't let this happen anymore. I grabbed my father, threw him up against the wall and said, "That is the last time you'll ever hurt my mother." Moments later, he comes out holding a 12-inch knife. I remember looking at my father and believing that he would stop, that he would not hurt me. Have you ever felt that level of certainty? So I stood there. Before I could take my next breath, he strikes the knife at my chest, cutting my chest as I fall to the ground. He strikes again and again. He wanted me dead. As I look up at my father, my mind could not comprehend what was happening. My certainty turned to fear, then terror. I thought I was about to die. I somehow managed to get away and get the police. 8 to 10 years jail for attempted murder, they said. As the police handcuffed my father to the bed, my mum led me into the other room and said, "You will not charge Dad with attempted murder." My sole purpose was to care for my mother. I was never more lost than in that moment. My inner star stopped shining that day. I don't know what took more of my life, my dad trying to kill me, my mum supporting him, or the police and the system doing nothing. That day I took on the belief that if I stand up for what I believe in, I will die. I'm not worthy of being supported, and I'll be abandoned no matter what I do. Fast forward to 2020, I'm fired from my executive role, have an argument with my son, so I decide to leave my home. I get a phone call saying, "This is on me, I need to fix it." I was so lost I didn't know what to do, and my marriage was over. I recreated the same belief as when I was 15. The difference this time was it was not my father trying to kill me, it was me. Since 1996, I've been searching for that feeling I felt when I was 5 years old. I've completed over 3,000 hours of therapy and personal development work trying to rebuild and unleash my inner star so I could feel that feeling again. Would you believe it was ineffective? The more work I completed, the darker the light became, until I admitted myself into Delmont Private Psychiatric Hospital for 3 weeks, where I leveraged my past learnings combined with the hospital expertise to finally complete my puzzle. Who wants to play with a kid whose mum tried to kill herself 5 times, who was locked up in a mental institution and missed over 60% of his schooling to care for his paranoid schizophrenic mum? Was never allowed to go on one excursion because his mum was scared he'd hurt himself, never attended or was invited to one party. His father was a violent alcoholic. Nobody wanted to play with that kid. I was so lonely. I was different from all of you. I built an armor so thick, no one could penetrate it. My breakthrough came when I took the armor off, looked into my heart, and allowed myself to feel my pain. I had to understand my experiences, the meaning I gave them, radically accept them, and to forgive. Forgive them and forgive myself. I let no one see my demons, my pain, my fear, the shame, and the worthlessness I carried, and how it has tormented me my whole life. Instead, I thought I had to be strong, had to be the problem solver, the fixer of all things. That was all I knew, until I lost everything. My executive role, my family, my marriage, my self-respect, and what little dignity I had left. On the 6th of July, I took my first Valium ever. 17 hours later, if the police didn't find me, I would be dead. The Valium broke through my armor and brought to the surface my original trauma. It was the first time I felt the pain of my father trying to kill me and my mum supporting him instead of me. Like, who wants to feel that? Which collided with my current situation of losing my executive role, my family, my marriage, my self-respect, my self-control, my mind, and my dignity. It was the most painful feeling I'd ever experienced. My heart felt like it was breaking into a million pieces. I just wanted someone to make it stop. On the 7th of July at 3:42 p.m, I decided to make it stop. Erik Erikson talks about the 5 stages of human development. In my experience, if your needs are not met, your development not provided, you had some challenging experiences in any of the 5 stages, then you can activate 3 of the greatest human fears. Fear that you're not lovable, that you're not good enough, and that you do not belong. I got all the human fears. I was not loved, not good enough, and I never belonged anywhere. No one teaches you what I needed. a one-stop shop for limiting beliefs, fear, trauma, or missing development. I searched for answers outside of myself and in others, but nothing I wanted was out there. I realised that you cannot get rid of your experiences or your trauma. What you do is find the meaning you gave them, you neutralise them, turn them into your superpowers. I learned that I have to love myself before anyone can love me. I found my inner peace. I'm incredibly grateful for every experience that has shaped who I am today. I've lost 15 kilos. My blood pressure has plummeted from 210 over 130 at its highest to no longer needing blood pressure medication. Who would have thought one act of kindness would change my life? That one day of kindness when I was 5 years old. I would not have known what to look for. I would have given up a long, long time ago. I am worthy, I am lovable, and I do belong. I've created a master blueprint on how to overcome limiting beliefs, fear, trauma, or missing development. If I can do this from where I came from, then it is possible for anyone, no matter what happened to you, to overcome limiting beliefs, fear, trauma, or missing development. My grandmother hurt my father, and my father hurt me and my mum. My great-grandfather and grandfather hurt my mum hurt me. I hurt my family and my children, and for that, I'm truly sorry. Hurt people until they stop and love themselves first. Thank you.